Welcome to all of the panelists. And today we are doing a webinar on DX in healthcare, digital transformation in healthcare. I'm Anurag Kapoor. Welcome to all our esteemed panelists and the attendees who will be bearing with us today for 1 hour. I hope we add value to you. I'm the co-founder and managing director of GHP Accelerator, on a journey to empowering entrepreneurs after having my own entrepreneurial shift and a decade-long experience of working with global enterprises. Um, just to set a little bit of a context here, what we are doing today, we all are aware the way the internet and social media penetration have broadened the scope of a typical Indian. Um, there are more people now who are conscious about their health and their fitness levels. And when I say fitness levels, it's not only physical fitness I'm talking here. I am highlighting both physical and mental fitness that we are focusing on. Um, I think we are sitting at a time when we are, sitting in the most critical health situation across the world. So having said that, mental fitness has taken a much more role to play for us to remain fit physically as well. So with the increase of usage of tech and internet, I think the health tech sector is in India is growing. The government's enthusiasm for innovation are locally made technology is at an all-time high, both at a central policy level as well as at the local level. So that's why we thought that this is the best time to sort of do this webinar and bring our perspectives in place. Having said that, it's quite a coincidence that we are talking here today when Race 2020 was launched by the Prime Minister on 5th October, on this Monday earlier, which also coincides with the GTC of NVIDIA that's ongoing as of now. Events talking about AI for India, and it's a very encouraging time to see how that plays for the healthcare sector. There have been massive changes, policy reforms, and there are a lot of untapped opportunities, and new emerging sectors are something to look forward to. Just to give you a little bit of an example and flavors, something known as on-demand healthcare, the role of big data in healthcare, virtual consultations, wearable medical devices, predictive healthcare, and of course, goes without saying, AI and blockchain. I think these are some of the key areas everyone is talking about. To give you a little bit of a perspective on the number and analytics of the industry, about more than 5,000 startups have been launched in health tech sector in India. And between 2014 till now, about 311 startups have raised approximately $2.4 billion. And recently, the PM announced, Honorable Prime Minister announced digital health ID for all Indians and NHS. Um, and we are expecting that the health tech market will contribute about $21 billion to the Indian GDP by 2025, which is still 3.3% of the total addressable healthcare market, and which is quite an encouraging number. The opportunity is much bigger than what it looks like on the surface. Just to give you a small perspective, on 3rd October, we just got a news from Inc. 42 that the health tech hiring has gone up as a demand, for the tech-enabled software solutions amid the COVID situation. So that's the gravity of need that the health tech market is facing right now for the right talent. So just for because of this context, I think we are sitting at the best time to do this webinar. And for everyone's reference, I would like to welcome all the panelists who've been very great. They have been very generous to be able to give their time today for contributing to this initiative that we have started. I would like to start introducing Shivangi Jain from Startup India. She is leading Invest India's corporate partnerships and global relations, where she's responsible to activate the ecosystem, working with Fortune 500 companies and industry consortiums. Though I know her quite well, she has a background working with UBS, where she was working with a lot of healthcare entities, and she was also having a very strategic role in the Oyo core team. So, which we all know is a very big story today. So she does have that exposure of entrepreneurial stint, in her, and I think she'll add a lot of value to today's interaction. So, thanks, Shivangi, for joining us today.
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you, Team GHP, for having me here.
Now we have Nithya. She heads startup and VC ecosystem for NVIDIA in South Asia, where she evangelizes the adoption of AI across various industry segments. She heads. She in fact, Nithya, it's wonderful to know that something so remarkable. Your wearable innovation, Nirvaya 2, was recognized by the US Consulate. It goes without saying the kind of contribution you have been adding as a technologist and empowering the entrepreneurs today.
Thank you so much, Anurag. Actually, really glad to be on this panel along with the really wonderful panelist alongside me. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks. In fact, today as we speak, there are a lot of topics being discussed. At GTC 2020, we read about the smart hospital ecosystems, the accelerated drug discovery, AI assisting imaging. I think these are topics I would love for you to speak about. As we progress, and how this partnership with GHP and NVIDIA would sort of be a very big boon for the healthcare startups, in AI space. Now, going forward, we have Dr. Ruchi Dana, and she is a qualified medical practitioner, and she's also transitioned successfully into a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader. Um, there's more than meets the eye when I talk about her, because she's been recognized by Forbes Middle East as the next generation business leader for the Arab world for 3 consecutive years. She's also Forbes Power Businesswoman 2020, an MBA from Stanford, a doctor, and an entrepreneur at heart. So thanks, Dr. Dana, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Anurag. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great. Now my next panelist is a very interesting story. Ajit, who's the founder of Deep Tech. I hope you don't mind if I share my screen a little bit. Um, just give me 1 second. Graph of physicians per million population.
Yeah.
So just wanted to show that the kind of problem that Ajit's startup is solving. It's a startup for radiologists' convenience using AI, and it's basically impacting the number of physicians required per million population. I think that's the kind of impact what Ajit is trying to solve. And this report I'm sharing is very, very old. So the problem exists from the starting of 2000 year, and even today, not many are able to solve it. But Ajit's startup has been very instrumental in sort of solving this, and Japan happens to be one of the biggest customers. Deep Tech was actually also named as one of the companies in the GTC summit recently, that on 5th October, by the founder of the NVIDIA group. And that's a very encouraging thing to see within the healthcare industry category. So thanks, Ajit, for joining us today, and we really hope for some very valuable contribution from your side.
Thank you. Thanks, Anurag. Indeed a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Mr. Amitabh Nagpal, he is from AWS. He is the head of Startup Ecosystem India at Amazon Internet Services. Prior to joining AWS, he was an entrepreneur and passionate about technology-driven businesses. He was recently the co-founder of Curo Healthcare, a digital platform for managing chronic conditions acquired by Roundglass. Now, goes without saying that he brings in a very good blend of technology, plus being an enabler right now, and understanding the perspective of healthcare, because he's been one of the innovators in the industry as well. Now, having said that, we also have Dr. Avinash from the Ruby Clinic in Pune. He's a qualified physician, radiologist by profession, and has more than 25 years of experience clinically. He's the head of radiology and head of digital strategy for the Ruby Hall Clinic, which is a leading multi-specialty hospital in Pune, India. Thanks, Dr. Avinash, for joining us today. I think your perspectives would be key for us to understand where we are and where we need to go in order to build a very successful digital healthcare strategy for
Thank you,
India.
Anurag. Thanks, everybody.
Uh, Lastly, we have Mr. Prateek Verma, who heads the product and growth at 1MG. Now, who doesn't know 1MG? I think it's one of the best examples of what India is able to achieve with technology. So, welcome, Prateek, and thanks for all your contribution to make 1MG where it is today. And your experience with HealthCard also, I'm sure, would be very valuable for bringing value to this discussion today.
Yeah, thank you, Anurag. Thanks for having me.
Great. So I would like to just start with a sort of a round robin approach. So I'll go one by one, asking you some questions. Um, and of course, I would want to just for everyone's knowledge, we have Shivangi only for a limited time. So Shivangi, I would want to pick your brains first. Would like to understand what are the recent noteworthy trends in the healthcare sector that you've seen since March 2020? That was the time when the COVID started. And any innovations that you have particularly observed in the sector that you would like to highlight?
Thank you, Anurag. I think this is a question that has been most commonly asked, and I think while COVID has brought challenges to many of us, many of the sectors, many of the startups and small businesses that have been working very hard for years, it has definitely got us some major opportunities as well. I mean, healthcare, edtech, online gaming. I think these sectors have generally seen an upward trend since COVID has happened. There's definitely more focus from the government side and also from the private side in setting up a strong healthcare infrastructure. We've seen more support from the government side as well, especially since the lockdown, in terms of easing out the policies to set up this infrastructure, and also in terms of coming with different programs where at least the innovations and startups are being recognized. Also, I think the major scope becomes in the field of e-pharmacy and telemedicine, which where I think for many of the startups, be it Mfine, be it you know be it, in fact, 1MG, and Pratik can of course comment better on this. I think they've seen almost like 3x growth in customers, right? So I think that has definitely been one of the major trends that we've seen. In terms of the key innovations, I would actually like to highlight a few of the innovations that have also come up as a part of the National Startup Awards that have been announced by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, where healthcare was, of course, one of the major sectors. And we had 4 subsectors defined as a part of that, which included startups in diagnostics, life sciences, medical devices, and access to healthcare. So, for example, Niramai has been one of the startups which has been doing diagnosis for breast cancer in the most innovative and also affordable way, and have been treating. They've actually screened over 25,000 women in more than 12 states. In life sciences, we have Born IU, which is actually developing these oral dispensable films, which has become like which is actually trending, and also a new source of really passing these medicines and the drugs that actually are required to go in the body in terms, in the time of the disease. I think this is one of the startups that is definitely noteworthy. For medical devices, we have this startup which is actually developing voice box for people who have throat cancer and helping them speak again. So I think that's the startup that's doing some great work there. We also have Wealthy Therapeutics, which is actually a virtual coach in terms of diagnosis for diseases, be it diabetes, be it cancer, and a few other diseases that come up. And of course, you would also know about SenseGiz and We Innovate Biosolutions also, which have been doing great work for a while. And even with respect to COVID right now, they've actually transformed and tweak their business model also a bit to kind of really suit the solutions. So I think the good thing which has happened since March is that while it offers great opportunities, startups have actually taken that proactive approach and really, tapping onto that opportunity. And if it meant revisiting their business models, many of them have done it and they're actually doing pretty well, especially in the healthcare sector. I think this sector is anyway inevitable, right? So I think there, and especially in India, which has 600 million digital population, right? This definitely has a lot of scope. There's a lot that can be tapped into even now, and this is definitely going to be an upward trend, is what I feel. And of course, there are other panelists who can also, who are experts in this field and probably can comment better. I hope that answers your question, Anurag.
Well, thanks, Shivangi. Definitely, I think I'll get on to the other panelists after this because I believe that they will have a very important perspective to give us, apart from the government side. On the government side, I'm also, because just to set the context, on the regulation side also, for all of us to be able to take that forward and give our perspectives on that, would like to understand. Are there any initiatives that the government or Startup India has taken for digital transformation in healthcare recently? Are there any new regulations in the sector, specifically on the digitization side?
So as per the Digital India initiative, digital healthcare is actually of the prime focus, right? And of course, the opportunity, while it's being leveraged by the startups, there's also a lot of untapped opportunity in terms of really our population really tapping onto all of these digital startups who have these amazing solutions and really utilizing them to the fullest. But I think a few, and also we know that Ministry of Health has definitely been very proactive through their national startup national health mission through Ayushman Bharat initiative, and has been helping the bottom of the pyramid really have a strong healthcare infrastructure, and also have more support from the government side there. So be it, so even the healthcare policy, if I can mention about that, it actually has three distinct goals. One is about use of electronic mediums to actually go the district level data, reinforce strong healthcare system by having registries for specific diseases, and also establishment of a federal national e-health infrastructure. So I think these have been the three major focus areas of the government, and they are definitely being worked upon, and a lot of work is in progress. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, also in consultation with Niti Aayog, released telemedicine practice guidelines, where now the physicians and the doctors can actually be consulted through emails, through telephone, and there are proper guidelines from the ministry for that. In terms of Startup India focusing on healthcare, we work in a sector agnostic way where we tap onto all of the sectors and try and provide startups opportunity in all of the sectors. But healthcare has definitely been one of the prime areas where we have done a few programs. For example, we had a program with Ministry of Ayush and with National Health Authority, where we invited solutions for supporting the Ayushman Bharat program, and we received over 300 applications, and then further cash grant was provided to the selected startups. Right now, by recently, we also closed the India Sweden Innovation Challenge, where we have partners from AIMS Jodhpur, AIMS Delhi, Ministry of Health, of course. Then we have AstraZeneca, NASCOM, Atal Innovation Mission, who actually come on board as partners, and we've received over 300 applications for this program also. And this program aims to help the startups through a 1-year incubation opportunity, through the market access support that may be required, 1,000 hours of mentorship, and a few other benefits that are going to be provided. And almost 10 startups are going to be selected as a part of this program. There's a Kavach program that has been very interesting and has been launched by National Science and Technology Entrepreneurship Development Board. National Startup Awards had healthcare as a category. So I think there has definitely been more support and more programs coming from the government side to support the startups in this sector. We also had, at the beginning of the lockdown, we also had a program which was called United Against COVID, where the government actually prepared a task force from NITI, from DST, DBT, Startup India, DPIT, where solutions were invited from startups which have solutions um, to help us in the COVID situation, which might be about geofencing, which might be about distant tracking, etc. And healthcare was also a major segment there. So I think startups from that were also provided market access and connect opportunities. So there have been programs, and there has definitely been proactive steps from the government to actually support the startups here, because I think this is definitely inevitable, and we really need to leverage on startups more, to really up our game and really be on top of innovation to reach out, to the length and breadth of the country.
I think thanks, Shivangi. I think today it's so visible and evident that there's so much reforms happening, and so many new regulations and initiatives being set up. And it does get difficult at times for an entrepreneur to sort of keep a track of all that's happening. So I think for all our fellow entrepreneurs, we know where to go now to understand about the new regulations and initiatives. But thanks, Shivangi. That was just to make sure that we are able to get your perspective. I would like to now get a perspective from the founders of the startups, and start with deep tech. And would like to understand, Ajit, what kind of digital transformation have you done in the healthcare, and what is its impact that you are able to feel is in any empirical
Right. No, thanks, Anurag. As deep I think there's a huge shortfall of radiologists globally, and I don't know whether you are aware, but India has about 15,000 radiologists for a population of around 1.3 billion. So it's a huge shortfall. And India is not an exception. Actually, there are several other countries globally, developed and developing economies. What digital transformation brings in is to enable what we call the teleradiology model, actually. And I think radiology is one of the leading players in the healthcare space, which has adopted to digitization. I think most of the scans which we see today are not analog films. We have digital scans which can be easily moved from one place to the other place. And as a result of that, what has happened is become very easy for a scan to be taken from one location to be available at some other location for a read. So within minutes, you can have access to experts or access to available radiologists, and in that way be able to deliver better healthcare to the patients, actually. So teleradiology as a market opportunity has evolved substantially because of digitization. That's one area. And it's really growing fast. I think today, as we stand, teleradiology is around $5 billion in global revenues, which is expected to be around $20 billion in the next 5 years. So substantial growth is expected. And I think India has a strong core competence here. India has been the global hub for IT outsourcing, and I think India has a great opportunity here in the teleradiology space as well. The other area which digitization is coming up in the radiology space is AI, like artificial autonomous driving. I think sometime in the near future, not immediately, but I think about 10, 15 years from now, you'll have autonomous radiology. Huge opportunities going to unfold. And I think that's one area where we are working on very aggressively. There are quite a few other companies. A huge amount of funding is already being poured in. Over $1 billion of investment has happened in the AI radiology space, actually. And I think so. These two are the key areas I feel in the radiology space are getting impacted.
Thanks, Ajit. And I would like to ask the same question to Prateek. So, Prateek, what's your perspective? I mean, we all know 1MG, but what kind of digital transformation do you feel that 1MG has been able to achieve in healthcare, and any impact that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what happened lately. So I think everyone knows that COVID-19 pandemic was one of the biggest challenges that we have faced in our lifetimes, and I think in all of this, online healthcare platforms, they stood the test of times and proved to be a backbone for the fight against COVID. Uh, right from enabling online doctor consultations to getting lab tests done at home and making life-saving drugs available in each and every corner of India. I think online healthcare platforms have been pretty effective, I would say. Uh, Even 1MG, with its vision of making healthcare understandable, accessible, and affordable for everyone, played its role in this. And with 25 million monthly active users that we are seeing and more than 40% of category share time, uh, I think I would say that I'm seeing an increasing acceptance of digital solutions in this sector. I think during the lockdown itself, e-pharmacy was declared as an essential service, and there was a brief disruption, I think, for a week or maybe less than that, but things got back on track with the support of all the authorities, local administration, government bodies, everyone. And then there was a report which was published lately, which mentioned that 9 million households used, let's say, e-pharmacy service, just the e-pharmacy service during the lockdown itself. And this number is expected to reach anywhere around 70 million households by 2025. Uh, and 1MG was no exception to this. I think it was already mentioned by Shivangi earlier as well that there was a huge growth that we saw in our numbers, be it online consultation, be it online medicine delivery, be it lab tests at home, all the business lines, all the services and offerings that we have, all the numbers saw a huge increase. In fact, some of these numbers are better than the pre-COVID times, and that's just a validation of the fact that uh, uh, the service and the digital transformation that is happening is a key need, and I think it was also mentioned it's a need and not a want. So that has happened, uh, uh, and 1MG has been there at the thick of it. I think one of the other aspects that we don't think about when we think healthcare is the information asymmetry, because that's something which exists, and it's a very important issue that needs to be highlighted. I'll again take an example from COVID times. That when it started, a lot of misinformation was being spread. We all seen stories of miracle cures and preventive measures that aim to assuage our collective anxiety, but ultimately have no basis whatsoever. So when the pandemic began, we have seen many of our users reach out to us in different ways, seeking one assured stream of information, and that's when we put together a team of our internal doctors, and we thought that we'll try to tackle this problem. And 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 the pillars of the project, like all other projects, are very clear that the information that we'll provide would be expert driven, research packed, non-manipulative, and the results were great. I mean, the information that we published, it was circulated across the world. It was read by cabinet ministers, Bollywood personalities, reporters from other countries. So that was the power of the digital platform, that a, a simple thing as an information asymmetry was being able to resolve through a system that tries to tackle it in a structured way. Similarly, so if I take another example, let's say there are a lot of villages and tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 areas where there are pin codes where you would not have a very effective supply of all the medicines which exist. So all these healthcare platforms, what they enable is that through their models, what they do is they empower all the users across the board, where they could get all these medicines, all the health supplies, all kinds of information, right from uh, uh, as I mentioned, doctor consultation, or lab tests, or medicine delivery, or anything for that matter. And with the internet penetration already increasing with a very steady state, so I think this is only going to get better. And yeah, yeah.
So thanks, Pratik. I think that's a really good example that you've given, and I think we can definitely see the way information asymmetry is definitely one of the subjects that has been going around not only in healthcare but in many industries. But in healthcare, it's a key problem to be solved, and DX is a good way to go forward. Coming on to Amitabh, from AWS, I would like to ask you, as market leaders in technology, how do you see the industry evolving towards digital transformation? Because you've been working with a lot of enterprises as well. So for healthcare specifically, in the next 5 years, how do you see the industry shaping up towards digital transformation?
Yeah. So, I can talk through two perspectives. One, and I'll talk through the perspective of developers, and then as an entrepreneur in health space also. See, as all of you know that we provide the basic cloud infrastructure, and to all startups and more so in healthcare, if you typically look at as what the been a catalyst for innovation, right? So, you want to do an AI/ML for imaging, like either in cancer or in radiology, and you have certain workloads. You don't have to go buy expensive GPUs. So you are able to take advantage of the cloud in terms of how you buy compute, how you buy storage, etc. And as use case more complex and AI with imaging radiology, then we have partnerships with other GPU providers, and even with companies like NVIDIA, where we are able to actually help you through different stacks. Right? One is in the infrastructure, one is on the just the metal, the platform stack, and then the middle layer stack, and then even the top layer stack. We've actually built components that as a startup you can do your minimum viable product. You can actually do product market fit at fraction of the cost. Fine. So you get compute instances. We've got a platform called SageMaker where you can test models, you can test data drifts, etc. And then you can even go further, and we've got ready-made machine models, learning models and these models can find. So fundamentally, if you look at it, how we help is, if you've got a use case, we help you take that to the market much faster. And the reason we are getting used is because people are moving to the cloud, people are using technology. Now, digital transformation is both fine. We enable that because we are able to get people onto the cloud, and because we're able and just because we are able to provide that infrastructure in terms of compute, storage, AI/ML, IoT integration, we are able to help entrepreneurs achieve that. Mute.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Amitabh, for your wonderful insights. And I would like to ask the same question to Nidhiya, because NVIDIA, as we know, has been a very strong enabler in the ecosystem and a technology partner. So, would love to understand your perspective about DX in healthcare for the next 5 years. How do you see it shaping up the enterprise, the healthcare enterprises?
Yeah, for sure. So, like Amitabh was mentioning, a lot of our companies, like which is focused on compute as an infrastructure, for us, it's mostly from giving access to people, whether it is from a cloud perspective, or is it from an edge perspective, or even from a data center perspective. So for NVIDIA, the fundamental idea of when we started off with GPU as a computing platform, the idea was to make sure that we can provide access to anybody, which is starting from a maker to an enterprise account to a startup to everyone. So even in the panel, I can see Deep Tech and 1MG, which are already good partners to NVIDIA when it comes to the compute infrastructure, as well as AWS, which is a cloud computing. They have been providing NVIDIA GPUs on the cloud as well. There is fundamentally, we can see a lot of good, progress which has been happening in the industry. From NVIDIA perspective, we typically focus on 4 segments. So the one is the drug discovery part of the healthcare. The second one is from the medical imaging. third one is from the genomic side, and the fourth one is from the hospital and the engagement mechanism. So these are the four segments NVIDIA as a company focus upon, where we have developed platforms on top of the CUDA layer as well as the GPU, where the companies, which it could be from a startup or from a government or from a maker or a student, anybody can build their own products on top of it. So that's how we function, because we want to be a person who is providing to the multiple industry partners, be it an OEM, be it an system integrator, be it a cloud service provider. That's how NVIDIA functions. Now, I just want to take a step back and then focus a little bit on how COVID has really put us also into the center of the activities that we are doing around the, especially to fight the pandemic. The first one is from the folding at home. It's a very wonderful initiative which has come from the community of the people who wanting to put forward the computing infrastructure to a larger cause for the world, and how NVIDIA has been trying to make sure that that's been given access to multiple researchers and other ecosystem partners, to make sure that there is drug discovery and other simulations which can be done on top of it. And typically, when the pandemic hit, a lot of companies, like including AWS to Google to NVIDIA to all of us, try to step up a little forward to see how we can help the governments, specifically when it comes to the high performance computing as well as the AI simulations, to see what is this particular COVID 19 is all about, and how can we develop a drug in case we wanted to put together a simulation package. That's how a lot of companies have stepped further. Now when it comes to the secondary part of it, where we have seen a lot of startups, including deep tech to 1mg to all of these companies, have stepped up to see what they can do it from their end actually. So this is from a consumer perspective, but we try to enable them all from a platform as a compute, and we were able to at least have a lot of success stories from that actually. And I first wanted to thank from all of them who has stepped up and then tried to put together their little effort to make sure that the world is surviving on top of it. Now, from the NVIDIA perspective, there's one more product that we tried to launch during the pandemic, which is called Clara Guardian, which was also highlighted during the last 2 days, during the GTC, where we have put together mechanism to make sure that the healthcare industry is surviving, specifically to give access to the safety protocol. So what Clara Guardian does is nothing but to give a more safety protocol access, where there is a hospital or a public sector, there is a company or anywhere where people need to access with having more social distancing, or having to provide more healthcare based protocols which has been deployed more from the image analytics side, is what we have tried to put together for Clara Guardian. So yeah, so that's pretty much from NVIDIA how we have tried to rally up in the COVID. But overall, I guess India as a country has been having quite a lot of progress when it comes to AI, and we have seen a lot of researchers stepping up and putting together a lot of good white papers and research publications, which has been done across the platforms. So we look forward to see how, as a company, we can support all of these initiatives from an infrastructure perspective, actually. So that's pretty much.
Thanks, Nidhi. That really helps a lot. So now we've heard from the government side, from the innovators side, from the enablers side. Now, Dr. Ruchi, I think now that you've had the perspective of all the three sides, how do you see, after listening to all these conversations, that what's the scope of digital transformation in the next 5 years from your perspective? Now that you've already heard the perspectives from the three sides.
Yeah, thank you, Anurag. I think we've come a long way. There has been accelerated adoption of various technologies just because of COVID, even though like telemedicine was around for such a long time, but it was not being adopted by the doctors or the patients. But suddenly we see that people are paying attention to it. In fact, I was on an all doctors panel a couple of weeks back, and it was a global panel, and I was the only one originally from India. So all the doctors worldwide were saying suddenly the patients are so much more adherent to the medications that we give. So everybody's so much taking care of their health. They're focusing a lot on preventive healthcare. So I can see like there have been a number of startups that have emerged in the remote patient monitoring space. Like, for example, Shivangi mentioned Wealthy. Wealthy was one of the startups that actually came to Dubai on behalf of the Startup India program. Like there were 7 startups that came to Dubai. I was one of the judges there. So I saw like the amount of innovation that India has gone through in the recent times. And there have been like a lot of new startups that are focusing on outcome based approaches. So instead of like just giving you services and all, they're focusing on the patient outcomes. And I think that will bring a huge change in the healthcare expenditures as well. And there's a global adoption of such startups. So digital therapeutics is, I think, like the most talked about thing in the recent past. So last year, if you look at the trends, it was mainly like longevity, precision medicine, personalized medicine, and all. And this year, we suddenly seeing digital therapeutics emerge out of the blue, and everybody's looking at it. And remote patient monitoring, elderly care. These are things that like we didn't really pay much attention to in the past, but it's gaining a lot of attention right now. And I think they also have like some of these startups also have very very sustainable business models. For example, elderly care is such a huge need, and not just in Japan or in the other countries, but even in India. I can see like there's so many like NRIs that have their parents back in India, and the parents are even unable to like pay the bills digitally and all. So there's so much help that's required in the elderly care segment. And it's good like finally there are startups that are paying attention to it, because there's a huge need. And it's sort of like an impact investing thing as well. But like these are sustainable business models, and there's a clear need. So I can see that these trends would emerge in the near future. Also for India particularly, I can see that even though like there's a lot of data that's being collected, but I think there's even more scope of using data for analysis of like the genetic and the microbiome makeup of Indians. Because till now, if you look at big pharma and all the clinical trials that have been done for various medicines in the past, most of it has been done for the Caucasian population. Nothing much has been really done for the Indian population. And if you talk about India, I think there are around 5,000 anthropologically different groups that live within India. So like it's such a precious data. And the more amount of data points you get for the same patients, like if you, for example, with remote patient monitoring, you'll get a number of data points. And then if you have the genetic or the microbiome sample for the same patients, then that data becomes very much valuable. For example, in the US and in the West, there are companies like 23andMe that do genetic testing and all. But even if like I get my test done, the only thing that it would show in terms of ancestry would be that, okay, you're Indian. Okay, that's something that I already know, but there's nothing much of value add to that, right? Because there's not much data available for the entire Asian population actually. So I think there'd be startups emerging in this space as well. And just because of COVID-19, I can see that a lot of attention is also going to cybersecurity in healthcare. So recently there has been a lot of phishing and ransomware approaches that are happening. And I think UCSF recently paid to get the data back from the hackers. So that was a really big shock for the entire healthcare industry. And especially because of telemedicine and people working from home, it becomes an even bigger concern. So recently I've been seeing like all the CIOs of the big hospital chains and all, they're focusing a lot on cybersecurity. I think this is one aspect in which like there is a scope for Indian healthcare startups to work on this aspect, because this is a growing need. And like suddenly like everybody has like even the hackers have so much time to to work on this. So like it's becoming an even bigger need. And with the emergence of remote patient monitoring, telemedicine and all, like there are more and more um, places of making this awareness that phishing attacks can be avoided. It's a very simple thing, but like there could be some startups that could work on just the awareness aspect as well. So I can see that trend. And apart from that, I'm really happy with the progress that India has made. And especially in the healthcare sector, I've seen like it's not a copy of business models from the West. There have been a lot of innovative business models that have come in India. Even pre-COVID, there were like companies that would send their people to your homes to get the blood samples and all collected. So this is something that would never be possible in the West, because labor simply is so expensive. But India can focus a lot on the service-based industries, and I think that's where like India is going. And I think after COVID, it has become an even bigger trend. even in Dubai right now, we don't see any companies doing like lab tests at home and all, but like that's something that has, like, India has sort of leapfrogged ahead in that domain. So I'm really happy about it. And there are a lot of innovative stuff, startups. I think like the next wave would be the deep tech wave, because there's so much talent, there's so much reverse brain drain that's also happening for India. And I think that those will all like come together to come up with some new good innovative business models for healthcare. Also, I can see suddenly like the governments and the corporates are sort of collaborating, and that's promoting a lot of startups that could come and that could commercialize. For example, I'm a doctor. I studied medicine during my undergraduate days, and I was working a lot on medical devices during my medical college days. And I was the first student of my university to get travel grant to go abroad to present papers and all on medical devices. So and I really wanted to commercialize them, but like the thing is, like, even the best of professors in medical college in back in those days, they didn't really understand the language of business, and that was a huge barrier. Even the professors themselves were so much passionate about creating a new devices or startup was not even a word back then in 2008. But like the thing is that there was not enough support, and like to leave a clinical practice and work on startup, that takes a lot of risk as well. So I'm happy to see like now the government is sort of supporting a lot of things, and there are new initiatives that are coming up, and even the corporates are open to do pilot programs. And also that's actually helping quite a lot in terms of like validation of the needs as well.
Sure.
Thank
No,
you.
thanks, Dr. Rana. I think you've touched some very important and eminent subjects and touched a lot of right chords when it comes to the three pulses of healthcare. One is business, second is impact, and third is technology. So I think glad to hear that from you. Now, coming on to Dr. Avinash, I think Dr. Avinash, you've heard the perspectives from all the four sides. Now, at the end of the day, you as a hospital and as a consumer to all the technologies and being the one who takes it to the consumer, what is your perspective about how the digital technologies are sort of transforming the sector?
Yeah, thanks everybody. I think the message was pretty much loud and clear from everybody that there's enough space for everyone here. And we need to understand that there has been never more pressure on a hospital or a provider to basically move into the digital transformation space right now. And there are three key areas. We feel it's the business of healthcare, how it's going to survive. Is when you have a good interaction between patient care. So we move to more from doctor-centric, hospital-centric to patient-centric care. How we basically are aligned as a provider. And most importantly, what is the behavior of the regulator? The important thing is the regulator behavior today, I feel, in spite of what one of the panelists said, is I don't see that kind of standardization or benchmarking happening in wireless or wearables, or the way the new startups are being encouraged. There has to be some kind of leadership which gives us the security to the providers on the way we treat our patients. So let me say, there are 6 pillars of digital transformation, which I look as a digital head of a hospital. The first important factor is telehealth. We have already adapted. It has been more demand. The patient-driven demand has made us open up the telehealth. But telehealth doesn't stop at only a e-consultation or an e-thermometer or a SpO2 monitoring. It has to be connected, of course, with mobile health, where the doctor is connected. Many times the hospitals also lose out that kind of opportunity because doctors themselves poach the patient. So the hospital lose out on that revenue. Second thing you need to understand is that the telehealth model, along with mHealth, we need to have something like an integratable opportunity with wearable and IoT. Now, what happens is, though we have got an IoT opportunity, which we are already testing and using on our patients in home care, there is no back-ended integrated electronic medical records for us to keep track of that data and use that data for population health management for the future, possibly second pandemic or other illnesses which are going to be more detrimental. So we have used both the opportunity. The first pillar of mHealth, telehealth, yes, we have been very aggressive about it as a hospital. To give you a number, we have admitted almost 2,500 COVID positive patients in the hospital. We have treated more than 4,000 patients on teleconsult virtual clinic using primary contact tracing. So both opportunities has been leveraged. Online pharmacy, yes, we have leveraged. Home testing, definitely we have leveraged. But what have we done with the data? I mean, are we harnessing the data? That is where we need help from industry. It could be, aggregator, somebody who can help us with data mining, use that information to basically support future care of these patients. The fourth pillar of digital transformation, I've been using very aggressively a deep tech platform, which Ajit was talking about, on machine learning using X-ray and CT triaging using scans. Because we need large volumes of X-rays, we need high volumes of CT scans. We wanted urgent triage of reporting, urgent shifting of patient, whether you go home after the X-ray or whether you get admitted, whether your breathlessness is seen as a manifestation of big bad pneumonia patch on a CT or an X-ray. So these kind of urgent care needs was kind of facilitated with the help of deep tech technology using artificial intelligence and smart reporting. That kind of reduced the turnaround time. So that also was adopted in the times of crisis by my hospital. And most importantly, when we talk about the factor of precision medicine, now this is something like you give personalized medicine care. We did capture the COVID opportunity here because that was already being taken care by many agencies, the government, the flu OPDs, the isolation care. We started looking at people who wanted to come into the hospital but were scared because they were fearing the impact of COVID infecting them. These are the patients of cancer, the patients who are on dialysis, the people who had bad diabetes illness, the people who have cardiology related illnesses, heart failure. For them, we use the online opportunity or the digital opportunity to start giving personalized care and precision medicine. So I feel in the last 6 months, our journey has been a little, I would say, more patient driven, demand driven from the other side. And the doctors were very skeptical initially on the acceptance of e-prescription, WhatsApp messaging, the kind of documentation that you require when you're kind of giving these kind of advices. But I think the new acts, the telemedicine acts have made it easy. But I still feel there is a lot of things to be done. I think there are two very important people, the providers, the doctors, and the startup investors and the startup manufacturers who are equally passionate. But I think it will require a lot of governance, a lot of benchmarking, a lot of stepping in, leading the way, making more clarity on how do we use digital transformation from the government side. That is something which I feel somebody on the panel, or we could have one more person on the panel who could kind of, drive the message rather than just, talking about it. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Avinash, that's a very important aspect. So we are done with one round of introduction. I think we have the right tone and the right approach in terms of where we are heading. Now, since there's a little paucity of time, I'm clubbing two rounds together just to make sure that we are able to finish in time. I'll also request you to keep a little concise in terms of the answers. So I'll sort of try to pinpoint the questions. When it comes, so I'll start with the same flow with deep tech. So being a startup, Ajit, would like to understand, your perspective on how startups have been impacted during these past 4-5 months. And if I had to, I'm clubbing the two questions. Then, what would be the top 3 regulatory changes or reforms that you would recommend for this sector, for digitalization?
Right. Thanks, Anurag. I think so COVID lockdown had a serious impact on probably all the businesses, including healthcare. And the lockdown basically resulted into a much lesser flow of patients to the hospitals. So for us, we were processing almost 40,000 scans every month actually on our platform end February, early March, which went down almost by 80% in the COVID lockdown phase actually. But since then, since April, now in September, October, we have recovered the volumes. Lockdowns have been relaxed, the volumes have recovered. Also in the process, as everybody was discussing, telemedicine has really gained momentum. Previously, there was a bit of a concern around adoption of telemedicine. And in the field which we are in, radiology, teleradiology, I think has got a substantially big push in this space. Also, from a startup perspective, being in the health tech space, I wanted to bring out an interesting point that with the COVID coming in, a lot of interest in the VCs in the health tech space has come up. So we got a lot more calls than we would normally get from the VC community, taking deep interest in exploring funding with us, and I'm sure a lot of other health tech companies. So I think all in all, I would say it has been a positive impact. There was a bit of a slump in between, but now we have recovered. And I think going ahead, we see a positive momentum getting built up because of telemedicine telemedicine, other initiatives, and much more funding flowing into health tech space. From a regulatory perspective, I think it's a very important topic. I think Dr. Avinash Naniwadekar talked about that. I think a substantial strategic perspective at the government level is critical. I think looking ahead 10 years from now, AI will be the driving factor of the economy. And economies which enable startups or ventures to develop good AI solutions will be the winners actually. I think Japan was a winner in the automobile industry. I think mobile technology was taken over by the US, Apples and the Androids. And we wouldn't have believed in the transformation these industries have brought in our lives. So similarly, AI is going to bring up a huge amount of transformation, but that requires huge access to medical data actually in the health tech space and other spaces as well. And I think today it's a bit ambiguous in India. It's not very clear and it's not very supporting, I would say. I think we need to enable a regulatory framework which helps startups to have easy economical access to aggregated health record data, also appropriately protected in terms of anonymization and other things. And I think unless we enable that in the country in a fairly clearly regulated way, an easier, simpler way, India as a country might lose up on the opportunity, I think. And that's where I think we need to really enable that in the coming short term, I think.
Sure. Thanks, Ajit. A quick word from you on this, Prateek. The areas of reforms that you feel, and the kind of impact on startups of because of COVID in the last 4 or 5 months, if you can highlight.
Yeah, I think us as an online platform, I think we saw a surge in all our numbers in all our offerings, as I mentioned, be it e-pharmacy, be it e-consultation, be it diagnostics, be it the content, information asymmetry part, which I talked about. All the numbers saw a huge, significant jump, and that is a validation of the fact that people are looking forward to innovation in this sector, and there are companies out there who are trying to help people in whatever way they can, and which we have already talked about. On the regulatory side, I think changes have already started to begin. uh, in last week of March, there was a telemedicine guidelines which were published, and that was a welcome step in this direction. Then lately, I think Honorable Prime Minister also announced National Digital Health Mission, which also I think it was talked earlier, mentioned by you as well. So one digital ID to keep record of all healthcare data. It will also help users in a way that all their healthcare data experience or whatever, lab tests, consultations, everything is stored in one place. And then if someone is moving from one institution to another institution, everything there's a seamless movement of information, which obviously helps in the better health outcomes. So now that is also a very positive and welcome step. There are e-pharmacy draft rules, which are, I think, already in the last stages. So for last 5 years, there were multiple stakeholder discussions which happened over them. It was out for public, uh, uh, for feedback, etc. And I think all of that has been done. So we are waiting for those draft rules to be notified. So I think, yeah. So So yeah,
So
thank you.
thanks, Pratik. And coming quickly to Amitabh, I think Amitabh would like to understand that from the cloud perspective, one point is that how can the adoption of cloud catalyze innovation in this space, and of course, how do you see the enterprises collaborating with startups to digitize this sector?
Okay, these are two separate these things, fine. So I'll take the first one. If you look at startup, fine, by default it has limited funds. And when I say limited funds, I say that in a very positive manner, because you're raising limited funds and that money is very expensive.
Yeah.
Fine. So we provide we provide the cloud infrastructure, we provide the compute, we provide storage, we provide very elastic compute. You want to do AI, you buy that much amount of compute. You want to test out an AI ML model, you can test out with a spot instance or reserve instance with and spend just like that. Fine. If you were 5 years back or even 10 years back, you would actually have to create a complete IT infrastructure. Fine. So when I say as a catalyst, we take care of actually the entire infrastructure needs and give it to you at a very, very scalable level. And as we work with enterprise customers and we work with many startups, fine, we understand the needs and we ourselves in our entire stack, we actually put in a lot of the services that might get used in that infrastructure. For example, we have solved security problems from a HIPAA perspective for many of the customers that work on this thing, right? And your question also had a second part to it. What was that? Could you just repeat?
So, second thing I want to understand that how do you see the enterprises collaborating with startups, reform the sector for the offerings for the customer?
I now there is where I will actually wear my entrepreneurial hat, having run a digital health platform of care and patient engagement, fine, and also have looked at both. I've looked at US health models, I've looked at the US this thing, and I've looked at India, fine. I think the place that we are kind of making we've done a lot of good work in fintech, fine. I think that's a place that we have to look at, understand that in healthcare, data is extremely important, fine, and for multiple reasons. The continuum of data, just making sure that we have guidelines that a hospital or a clinic, we are all putting data in a central platform along commonly understood guidelines how data is nomenclature. So there's Nomad, there's Fire, there are many ways to uh, just make sure that the data is understood across the ecosystem, fine. So what I've seen is one in startups, you just cannot do everything, fine. So you have to go deep dive and do something, but you need health data that a lab provider might have. You need data that a doctor has done a prescription and put in a treatment pathway. So how do you make sure that everybody's putting in data in a similar format that across the enterprise that you can use, fine. And the other thing is we have to you go to you go to hospital X today and then you go to a hospital Y tomorrow. How does your data flow from one place to the other? I just think that if those guidelines come in, we can actually have a health infrastructure which can manage 1.3 billion people at a fundamental lower cost. If you look at the cost that US spends in healthcare is phenomenal. And one more thing that I will put here, wearing my entrepreneurial hat and for the entrepreneurs here, is that if you look at healthcare inflation, that beats normal inflation by 3:1 or 4:1. Fine. Meaning, and we've also seen that any healthcare issue that happens in a family is responsible for economic downfall also. Fine. So that is how important for us to manage healthcare is both preventive and curative, and making sure that we can be as preventive first and curative. Fine. So I think it's a policy issue. It's a issue that enterprise customers come in. It's a very large problem to solve. That how we can actually solve a healthcare problem for the kind of the population that is in India.
Sure. No, I think very, very rightly said. I think this is a very important aspect that startups have to look at. And inflation, spiraling of inflation is something that really needs to be kept under check. Using technology, I think. Thanks for your inputs, Amitabh.
Thanks.
Now, I'd like to come to Nidhya, and since Nidhya, thanks for addressing in a very swift way last time also in terms of the kind of focus area that NVIDIA has. Now, since you're a global organization, I would like to understand your perspective in terms of how the Indian innovations in the sector are varying from the global ones in terms of the focus areas or any other parameters that you can guide us on.
Yeah, for sure. So, from a global innovation perspective, there has been significant difference when it comes to the quality of data that they deal with, as opposed to the amount of data set that we have at the Indian firms actually. So that is a significant difference we have seen when it comes to the AI innovations, and I'm sure deep tech is a classic example of they have really put themselves into a global solutions, not just catering to India as a geography, but also to the other organizations. So we do have almost 1,000 plus healthcare startups just in our innovation program, which has been catering into multiple geographical location, not just in US actually. So one of the main thing that we have been trying to figure out is with respect to the CE and the FDA certifications, because many a times a lot of this innovation fail to tackle into that or get into the whole long process of getting FDA certified or CE certified, is where we are trying to see if there is a possibility that NVIDIA can help out as many startups as possible. So from India, very few companies have got a lot of certifications done. And like Dr. Avinash and Amitabh was also mentioning, that there is a lot of standardization process which we need to come into practice, especially for India. And many a times, Indian organization fail to have a client from other regions, specifically because of this primary reason. And secondary thing is with respect to the how we can have more privacy and data, like especially when it comes to the federated learning. How can we make sure that the healthcare data is secured more than anything else, because it is a sensitive data that we are dealing with. So it's a chicken and egg problem. Like without data, you can't predict or have analyzed patterns out of it, and without that, obviously the algorithm doesn't perform, right? And having said that, we also need the data at a very granular detail, and only then we can identify and figure out what can be done more on top of it. So from a data perspective, the quality of data as well as the continuity, like, if the data is not able to be correlated, then there is no purpose of such data. So that's something we need to put together, maybe consortium sort of format, which can have access to multiple types of data when it comes to the racial profiling, like all kind of the tag parameters has to be been inbuilt into the same thing actually. The third thing is with respect to the policies that the government can take in to make sure that there is more infrastructure support to the startups available in the country. So I have seen a lot of initiative from government of India, like to trying to support startups. So and as much as corporates is also trying to help startups. But if there is a collective understanding to put together a larger support mechanism for the startups, especially to transform their solution, that would be something which we can really inspire from other ecosystem. Especially, I would really look up to how the US have done it, like, from supercomputing facilities, like, especially the Summit is a supercomputer based in US, and how the government has opened that up and given access to multiple startups during the COVID time. So that's a very classic example of how government can step in and see if there is a possibility to give out infrastructure access to startups. The second part is with respect to how can we provide more conversations, or like, like Dr. Avinash was mentioning, it's not just about talking, we still have to put together action items and see what can be done more than just talking, right? So I don't think I have seen that in India much, like, or yes, we are, I mean, it's not about like the quality of people who are here. It's about having a common platform to have actually put together such action items. So that's something which I see lacking in India. But apart from that, I think India has a huge potential, because the number of healthcare startups which has been coming out of India, which has really made us proud, is like, for example, Deep Tech, Cure.ai. So all these Niramai, like all these companies are a fantastic example of how India can be a good example to the rest of the world. And as a company, we would love to support as much as startups as possible when it comes to the healthcare innovations. And I would say it's mostly from all of us need to work together to figure out what is the right step, rather than one particular entity working in silos and getting things done.
Thanks, Nidhi. I think that's a very enlightening, set of examples that you gave. Coming on to Dr. Ruchi, I think, since you've had that journey of a medical practitioner as well as being an entrepreneur and now such a successful business person. Would love to understand your perspective in terms of if you had to encourage, emerging aspiring entrepreneurs within this space, then what are the three top areas that you would want them to focus on from a use unmet need perspective and the market opportunity perspective, if you can highlight?
Sure, Anurag. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to stress on the power of networking. That's really, really important because what I've noticed, especially with young entrepreneurs, is they're a little bit hesitant about like even going out and asking for things. So I always quote a line by Oprah Winfrey, which says that you get in life only things that you ask for. So like only if you have the courage to ask for things, that's when you get things in return. Because like if you just think about things and plan a lot but like don't take action, then nothing really happens out of that. So I think networking is really, really important. And these days, like even though you cannot go to events, but there are a ton of like online events happening, like just like even posting questions in like webinars like these, that would give an opportunity to actually interact with the panelists and like take your discussion forward. Because like even though as a startup, like people are almost always fundraising, but even if you're not fundraising, it's really important to network with the right industry experts and all, because like it's important to build that relationship and then later on go to them for fundraising. So for fundraising, again, like networking would be a very important aspect. That's, I think, the best advice that I could give. Apart from that, like it's really, so I at Stanford, apart from a full-time MBA, I also took the Stanford Biodesign course. So what happens there is that it's at the intersection of various disciplines. So there are doctors, engineers, lawyers, MBA students, PhD students. They come together to solve for unmet clinical needs. And our team actually won the NIH grant from the US government for needs finding. So there we were taught like it's really important to find a need first and then come up with like crazy solutions to solve for that need. What I've seen with young entrepreneurs is like they'll sometimes like find a solution and then look for the problem. So that's the wrong approach, because like then like even if, for example, I've seen a couple of robotic startups in which like there's no need of robots, and like it's not a sustainable business model, but like just because there's a technology they want to like apply it to various problems. And so that would be the second advice. And the third advice would be to look after a huge market, because sometimes people get really passionate about their personal needs or something, like something that they might have faced in their own families and all. But if you look at the problem and the market size is not big enough, then really doesn't make sense to put in so much effort and all. And even if you go to investors later on, then they would definitely look at the market size. So that's, and the market size determines how successful your startup would be, how much impact you'd be able to bring about with the technology that you're developing. I think these would be the key three areas that I would recommend.
No, thanks. I think, Dr. Ruchi, I think that's a very interesting perspective, which in fact leads me to the question to Dr. Avinash, because, what Dr. Ruchi rightly mentioned is that, a lot of entrepreneurs first develop solutions and then look for the problem or the need of it. So, Dr. Avinash, since you're representing the practitioner's perspective of being able to take these solutions to the market, to the consumers, and also sort of use them to be able to, make their lives better. Can you highlight on the need perspective that, what are the three top needs of as a practitioner, as a hospital, that you would want to, talk about, that, startups should try solving, or rather addressing, in the current times? Dr. Avinash, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So I would say I will not be able to give you the entire answer to this question. What I feel, the gap between the startup and the provider is that they don't understand each other till the product is in their face or it's going to be tested. I see a lot of young startups coming in with a lot of ideas, and then they struggle because they lack agility after they have reached a certain point in their innovation. I think it's important to basically have something like a health tech ecosystem, which we have got in our hospital, where we invite young minds to come and say, hey, listen, this is the Pune Health Tech Forum. Ajit is one of the partners on that. And we basically brainstorm and say, hey, listen, why don't you spend 3-4 months, intern in the hospital, talk to doctors, talk to nurses. Your idea may not necessarily always come from a technology. It could be something which will help me change my workflow. It may just be something in a UI UX opportunity. You know, it's not always that the medicine and a technology and a device is going to be the way you're going to make a startup happen and create the best idea. So if you look at something which Dr. Devi Shetty said, that which is going to be the next biggest healthcare player in the next 3 years, it will be some call center chap sitting somewhere in Philippines going to give me a bed when I need it, rather than somebody with a large hospital opportunity. So I feel there has to be a strong relationship. See, doctors are tough. The pandemic has made them realize that there is a world outside which is changed. And this is where the adoption is going to happen. So this is the right time for the young startups to come in and interact with the physician community, the nursing community, the physiotherapy community, the laboratory community. It could be anybody. So if you look at the way innovation happens in big companies, which are the device manufacturing companies like Medtronics or Abbott or Philips or GE, they sit with the user in the innovation setup. They spend years and years trying to build a product. They do very robust, hardcore testing, take FDA, CE approvals. Unfortunately, with startup, once they make the product, this is my very cynical opinion. Once they make the product, they say, "Hey doc, can you test this out for me?" I said, "Okay, let's get into the testing model." But then I need to know what is my regulatory framework. If you understand the Indian healthcare situation is it's federal. You see, the state decides what it wants to adopt. There is a dichotomy in what I charge in the state of Maharashtra and what somebody else charges in Karnataka. And the government of India lays down certain rules which the state may not adopt. So we need to find the right balance. So I know I'm not giving you the right answer, Anurag, but I'm just like voicing my frustration as a healthcare provider that I am willing and ready for the startup to come, engage, partner the journey, and let's get into this act together. We cannot have you making products in your lab, innovation park, or some infotech park. Sorry, you have to come and make the hospital your playground. Test it, validate it, fail, have the doctors, the clinical community on your side, have the Amazon, the Nvidia, the 1mg, everyone together. I'm sure Ruchi will agree that what she did in Stanford years back, this is where India right now is an open playground, and this is the best way that GHV and the team could kind of open this opportunity, create these forums, rather than posting on some small, innovation workshop which doesn't really reach out to us doctors. For us, we are pretty much blinded to the fact. So please, let's open up this opportunity beyond a webinar into a larger conversation. And I think that's the way India would really change.
So thanks, Dr. Avinash. I think this couldn't get better than what you said, because that's exactly what we have set out for. And this is just to set the tone and also to understand what our objectives should be as GHV, to be able to integrate, bring together all the players in the industry, ecosystem partners, practitioners, also innovators, regulatory frameworks, and sort of collaborate together to address the industry's digital transformation requirements. So as thanks for all your contributions today, to all of you eminent speakers. And I'd just like to quickly summarize and conclude the webinar today. Just to let you know, this is first of its series, and as Dr. Avinash also mentioned, it's not only going to be a webinar. Eventually, we have to culminate this into a practice which helps startups collaborate with enterprises with the support from ecosystem partners like NVIDIA, like AWS, and help innovators like Ajit and Prateek to be able to solve the problems that not only hospitals face, but as consumers, what we face together, and the kind of risks that we sort of are envisaging in the current health environment. So some of the key points that we definitely discussed, I'd like to quickly summarize, were sort of the kind of shape that telemedicine has taken today. What Prateek also rightly mentioned about the information asymmetry that needs to be taken care of, about the digital therapeutics and the remote, monitoring that Dr. Ruchi mentioned, and she also mentioned about the elder patients' care. I think these are some very important chords that need to be touched. Data security, cyber security. I think it's an understatement that how important is the fact that our health data is protected and sort of in the right hands, and of course sort of harnessing that data. I think it was a very important subject that Amitabh also touched, that a lot of times we are not really harnessing that data. And I think Dr. Avinash also highlighted this part that, harnessing that data for the use of the practitioners is super important. And with that, I think with these, themes to our way forward, I think what we would like to do is pursue these conversations going forward. And I will probably connect with you individually also later after these webinars and, see how we can collaborate and sort of co-create solutions for the industry along with, all of you to bring a digital transformation for the healthcare industry. And thanks everyone for joining us today and really appreciate your time and hope all our audience and viewers today got some takeaways and value out of this conversation that we had today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, everybody. Pleasure. Thank you.